There are memories you wish you could erase, and places you swear you'll never revisit. Cedar Grove. It's one of those places for me. It haunts me. I thought this would be just another story, just another adventure. But I was wrong. So, if you're here, maybe you'll understand why I'll never go back to those woods. My girlfriend and I, we were inseparable. She was the adventurous one, the thrill seeker who'd turn a quiet night into a whirlwind of excitement. When she suggested a weekend at Blackwood Pines, a secluded spot deep in the forest, I thought, why not? We both wanted a break from the noise, from the stress. Just the two of us, no one else around. We started late in the afternoon, the sun low in the sky, casting shadows on the trail. The forest was peaceful, or so I thought, until the trail twisted and turned in ways we didn't expect. The path seemed to shift under us, and a strange unease settled in. We were deep in those woods, our phones out of range, the silence almost suffocating. After what felt like hours of wandering, we realized we were hopelessly lost. The sun was fading fast, and a creeping darkness enveloped the trees. Panic began to set in. We tried retracing our steps, calling out to see if anyone was nearby, but our voices echoed back, swallowed by the woods. Just as despair was about to take hold, we spotted it. A cabin, seemingly abandoned and hidden among the trees. Cedar Grove. It looked worn, almost like it was waiting for us, and in that moment, it was our only option. We exchanged a glance filled with uncertainty, but we knew we didn't have a choice. "It's just for one night," she said, trying to lighten the mood. I followed her inside, hoping it'd be a harmless adventure. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay, a chill that settled deep into my bones. We found a small room, with a creaky bed and a heavy silence hanging over us. I lay down next to her, listening to her breathing, hoping to drift off to sleep. But then, I heard it. A faint, rhythmic tapping, echoing through the house. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just the house settling. But the sound didn't stop. The tapping grew louder, and then I heard it. A whisper, soft and distant. I sat up, my heart pounding as I listened. It was calling my name. I looked at her. She was lying there, wide-eyed, staring at the ceiling. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, fear clear in her voice. I nodded, feeling the fear claw its way up my throat. "Stay here," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. I made my way down the hall, each step echoing in the silence, the darkness thickening around me. Then, I saw it. A figure, shrouded in shadows, barely visible at the end of the hall. I froze. It felt like time had stopped. The figure just stood there watching me. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished. I stumbled back to the room, barely able to breathe. I told her everything was fine, but I knew she didn't believe me. We lay there in silence, too scared to close our eyes. And then, we heard it again. That faint whisper, louder this time, closer. I turned to look at her, but something was wrong. Her eyes were wide open, fixed on the ceiling, her face pale. "They're here," she whispered, her voice hollow, distant, like she wasn't really there with me. I shook her, trying to snap her out of it, my own panic rising. "We need to go," I whispered, pulling her up. We stumbled down the hall, heading for the front door, but when I tried to open it, it wouldn't budge. Then I felt it, a cold, bony hand on my shoulder. I turned, expecting to see her, but she was already across the room, her face pale as she stared into the darkness. "Did you hear them?" she whispered, her voice barely a breath. I looked around, but there was nothing, just the suffocating darkness and that feeling of being watched. We were trapped. Every attempt to leave led us back to that chilling, silent house, as if the walls themselves wanted us to stay. We ran upstairs, reaching a small window. I pushed it open and we climbed out, sliding down to the ground. We didn't stop running until we reached the edge of the woods, the sun just beginning to rise. We didn't speak a word on the way home. We thought it was over, that maybe it had all been a nightmare. But when we finally made it back to my apartment, I had to know. "What did you see?" I asked her. She looked at me, her eyes distant, her voice barely a whisper. They were watching us, and I don't think they wanted us to leave. I thought that was the end of it. But sometimes, late at night, I wake up to that same sound. The tapping, soft and rhythmic, like footsteps down a hallway. And when I close my eyes, I can still feel those cold, empty eyes watching, waiting. So, if you ever find yourself in those woods and you come across an old cabin, don't go in. And if you hear tapping, run. Don't look back. Because Cedar Grove, it never lets you go. And that's the story of Cedar Grove. If you made it to the end, I hope you'll think twice before exploring abandoned places. Let me know if you'd stay in a cabin like this. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, if you dare.